Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll take a look at the Artist Hub in Pelican Rapids, Minnesota. But first, joining me now is author of Prairie Silence, a memoir, a rural expatriate's journey to reconcile a home, love, and faith, Melanie Hoffert. Melanie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
As we get started, as we like to do here on the show, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're originally from.
Sure. I grew up on a farm near Wymer, North Dakota. I went to high school in Wymer, graduated with 21 people. We were together from K through 12. When I graduated, I then went to Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. There, I ended up with an English writing degree. And afterwards, I left, went to Minneapolis, just trying to get away, going to the big city. And after several years being there, I got my MFA in creative writing in Minneapolis. So I've been in Minneapolis basically since I left North Dakota.
Well, so, you got in, so what made you get into writing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wasn't, when I was little, I didn't have this dream of being a writer necessarily, but I'm a creative soul. And as I got to be a little bit older, I just realized that writing was my creative outlet. So I started writing a little bit when I was in high school, working on the school paper and journaling. And then when I got to Concordia, I started taking English writing classes, and it really fueled this passion in me to just make meaning out of life with words. And so from that point on, I kept returning to writing as my creative outlet.
All right, well, let's turn to the book a little bit. I've got a copy of it here. I know writing this book, I understand, was difficult for you and probably therapeutic also in some ways. But so can you tell us about the book?
Yeah, so the book in large part is about growing up in rural North Dakota and how as an adult I really craved going home. I craved the gravel roads and the fields and the farm, and yet I had maintained a distance over the years because I happened to be gay, and I never really told anybody back home. I mean, I at some point in my later teenage years talked to my mom, but other than that, I maintained the silence. But when I then went off into my larger life, it became a non-issue, except when I came back home. So in the book, I talk a lot about being really pulled home, but not being able to reconcile the silence that I had about this particular part of my life. And so over the years, it became a huge strain and something that really, I think, kept me away from North Dakota. So in writing the book, writing and publishing are two different things. I wrote over the course of 10 years, and I basically, was writing from fragments of my life that then came together later as a book. And so the writing was good for me to make sense of the silence, and then publishing it, of course, has been interesting because now it is my story and it's out in the world.
Yeah, well, publishing is a whole different story.
Yeah, exactly.
But a little bit on the writing, because as I look at some of them, you harvest chapters or whatever, harvest retreats, yoga in the air, small town tour. I mean, did you write chapters at a time, or how did you put it together?
Yeah, so early on, and like I said, I've been writing a long time. Early on, it was just fragments. It was me trying to reconcile things in my life, or I had a vivid image or memory that I wanted to capture or make sense of. But after I saw that, okay, I have some fragments that could come together as a book, I ended up taking a month off of my regular job, returning to North Dakota to live the life of a farmer for a month with working with my dad and my brother. So I went back to the farm, and when I was there, I visited small towns, around where I grew up. I spent some time in the fields, and I really took in everything that I had left behind. So hence, many of the chapters are about that present day arc of me going home for that month and my adult perspective on, North Dakota and my family and the silence that I write about.
Well, can you talk a little bit more about what it was like growing up in sort of a small rural religious community, and knowing that you were not heterosexual?
Yeah, I knew early on that I was different. Age 4, I just had an awareness. It was an emotional and spiritual awareness about love. It wasn't about some sort of sexual desire. And so I had this fullness in me, and I just knew I had an affinity towards women, and that's where I would someday end up. So growing up, I knew to keep it a secret, but I didn't necessarily feel that like I was bad or evil. I had a very loving family. The community large was very loving, and it wasn't something that was talked about. So I just knew not to talk for some reason. It wasn't until later in life where I started to affiliate with more, for lack of a better word, extreme religious people, not from my small town, but in the broader world, that I really started to examine and wonder, about right and wrong. And so growing up, I would say it was more about just keeping a secret. It wasn't about feeling, necessarily condemned. It was later in life that I felt that.
So you came back for Harvest, and I take it, what it sounds like is you used this time to sort of reveal to some of the people in your life of your lifestyle. And what kind of peace did that bring to you?
Yeah, I think that Harvest trip home was the first time that I had conversations with a few folks and just ended up continuing the conversation. I had become so used to slipping out of conversations or stopping a conversation at a certain point in time. So I really, in those moments, just stayed present and stayed honest. And it was quite a gift to me because I realized that, people were much more open than I had anticipated. And for me, the more that I felt people respond to me in warm ways, the more comfortable I felt just being honest. And so that was a huge, growth spurt for me in terms of my evolution.
You talked about supportiveness. What about your grandparents? Understand they were accepting and understanding.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing with my grandparents and the people that I knew in my life, including my family, who you asked about, religious, the religious community. The most faithful people in my life were also the most loving, and so it was never a question for me that they would be accepting and loving, and so they did not treat me any differently over the years. As they knew, they welcomed the people that were in my life, and I didn't feel 1 ounce of judgment.
What about your dad's reaction?
My dad is I would call him a stoic farmer. I describe him as a man of very few words, and in a loving way, because he definitely does talk and we have great conversations. My dad too, I've never felt any sense of rejection or judgment. We've not openly necessarily talked a lot about it, about my life in that way, but I kind of take that more as sort of how our personalities come together rather than anything beyond that.
What's been the reaction to the book thus far from people from your hometown region?
Yeah, so that's been the shocking thing. Like I said, writing the book was one thing, but publishing it was another, and I did not know what to expect because the silence I write about is an active, present thing in my life. I had not reconciled or talked to a lot of people. So the reaction that I've gotten from my hometown and people around here has been overwhelmingly positive. I've been invited back to Wahpeton. I had 2 events just a couple of weeks ago, and the places were packed and people were excited. And a lot of people identify with themes in the book themselves. So I've had people talk about feeling alienated or, being drawn back to the prairie but not knowing if they actually belong there, and just people who love the land and love North Dakota and feel like they've gone into the larger world and couldn't explain to anybody why a gravel road or a field would be beautiful. So I have people who have identified with themes in the book at some universal level, and that to me, or to any writers, I think the biggest compliment. So in short, the reaction from back home has been very enthusiastic, very welcoming, very warm, and it's been shocking to me.
Well, in the book you talk about small towns with empty streets now where they used to be vibrant. Can you expand and talk about this?
Yeah, my memories of Wyndmere, for example, were of having a grocery store there. We would go get our groceries. Actually, there were 2 grocery stores there when I was growing up. There was a Main Street cafe, there was a lumber yard at the end, there was the Johnson store that was on Main Street, a convenience store. And so I remember going to the center of town to be a part of the community. Of course, things change, right? So businesses shifted to the edges of town, and now people go to Wahpeton. They go to Fargo to do their errands. And Wyndmere is, pretty much intact. It's other towns around that I know 80 years ago they were bustling, and now they're pretty empty. So in the book, I actually do a small town tour where I go to all these little towns and I really take in what's left. And I think about, community, or the notion of community, which I haven't been able to recreate in a larger city. So in ways, I think that my book is a tribute to a way of life that I know a lot of people aren't going to experience in the way that I did, particularly in the future. So there's a little bit of mourning that goes on in the book for that way of life.
Well, in fact, you mentioned a little bit of this just a moment ago. The title of the book, Prairie Silence, sort of has a dual meaning in reference to how people in rural communities sometimes hold their emotions in check, so to speak.
Yeah. So as I started writing, I was talking about my silence, and then I saw people around me, the silences that they held about different things, that they just never were comfortable talking about in their lives. And then I started to metaphorically connect that to the land that we all knew. So in some ways, I think that the land of our childhoods, or the lands that we live on, imprint in our beings, and there's some sort of metaphorical mirror. And so I talk about prairie silence being both a silence of the prairie, the actual physical land, as well as the silence of the people, in the way that your neighbor's going to shovel you out when there's a big blizzard, but do you two actually have a conversation that goes, into your deepest truths? And I'm not certain that a lot of people are that comfortable with those kind of conversations back home.
You also write about being traumatized the first time you had an intimate encounter with a woman. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, well, as a kid, I had these illusions or dreams of love. I mean, that was what I was chasing, is this notion of love. And so I dedicated or devoted a chapter in the book to it. The first time that I actually had a sexual experience didn't mirror that. And I guess in reflecting on it, I realized that it's not necessarily about men or women, or, it's not about sex. It's really about the person, or the person that one should be with. And so I, like many teenagers, high school kids, had an unpleasant experience, but got beyond it in life. So.
Yeah, maybe a little touchy subject here, Melanie, and our producer Matt O'Lean. I think y'all may have shared some talk about this. He's from a small town near the area, and it's sort of a love-hate relationship that you have with your home. That really isn't your home now, and sort of in terms of what we hear as small town values, and yet sometimes in your case this isn't the case. So because people can be judgmental and mistrustful of now outsiders and things, and not accepting by the normal of the rural culture. So can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of kids grow up wanting to get out. They see a small town, small-mindedness, and they're like, get me on the next train out of here. I actually wasn't one of those kids. I really appreciated where I was from. I loved the people that I was surrounded by. But in leaving, I did have this fear of the way that small towns, everybody knows everybody, and if there's something off with someone, there is some judgment. So I think in ways it's probably harder for outsiders who've come into small communities. And I've had people send me their stories and emails from all over the country about their relationships either with their town of origin or moving into small towns. And so I think that there's maybe a little bit more suspicion about outsiders than there is about people there, who are a little different, or at least that's been my experience. So I think it's really hard because, like I said, when the book came out, I didn't know what to expect, and I've gotten nothing but love and positive reinforcement. Of course, that doesn't mean that everybody, thinks that, or that there aren't opinions contrary to what I've experienced, but I think that the beauty of North Dakota and small towns is that people know people, and if they know you, they're going to stand by your side regardless. And so I think that's where breaking down our differences is helpful via storytelling.
Okay. In your book, you write about going to Bible camp as a youngster, and how you felt the message you heard there didn't quite jive with what you were sort of feeling. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I, because I was a very spiritual kid and I saw models of deep spirituality around me, I was very drawn to that. And so, like I mentioned earlier, I sort of took a path towards the extreme piece of it. I went to a Bible camp, worked as a camp counselor, and I really thought my job was to come back and make sure that everybody, convert everybody in the world to think that what I thought. And I was very judgmental, actually, of the small town, thinking they were not spiritual enough, whatever. So I really I evolved via that experience to recognize the judgment that I carried about other people. And it's really helped me as an adult to keep that in check, because I think that's probably one of our biggest issues in this world, is our judgment of difference and our judgment of other people's belief systems. So I really try to take people at face value and welcome whatever their belief systems are.
Well, Well, Melanie, what's been the reaction to the book so far with members of the gay community, I guess, because you've talked about, and friends of yours? So.
I think where I've heard the most is from people who happen to be gay and grew up in rural areas. I think that's where it's resonating, people who can identify with that experience. And so overall, it's been very positive. I think people have welcomed the book, and so yeah, but I think it's been mostly just people with my experience who I've heard from, or people who can't believe, like, this is how I grew up. I actually, they weren't gay, but I have colleagues who, live on the East Coast, and they actually took a trip back here, drove through Wahpeton, went to Weimar, did the small town tour in my book, and they were just fascinated with rural America, so it's been interesting.
Well, in your book, and we don't want to we want people to read the book, I guess. So, but there's here where your father burns the barn. Why is that so traumatic?
Yeah, that was for years. I had been trying to convince Dad to save the barn because it was this old wooden structure. It as the years went by, it became really beat up. But it was one of the last original standing buildings of the farm, and I wanted to keep it because to me it made the farm feel, in the book I call it farmy. It was like the centerpiece of the farm. So I had an attachment to it, whereas my dad, the farmer who has to work the land, just sees it as a big headache. It's a building that's not safe. And so anyway, he and I had that push and pull, but for me it was both, I had an attachment to that actual building, but it was also symbolic because many barns are going down, and the prairie landscape is changing because people aren't going to necessarily put big, beautiful wooden barns up anymore. So that, to me, again, was one of those sort of metaphorical representations in the book of change.
Well, in fact, you write about the healing quality of the farmland.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, the farm to me is, I actually need it for nourishment and wholeness. So when I go back to North Dakota, I feel something that I don't feel anywhere else, even though I've been to many beautiful things in the world, places in the world. I think that there's something about the openness. Your eyes are not stopped like they're in the city or even when you're, by mountains. And for me, probably because that's how I grew up, I think that beauty feeds me on some level, and it is very healing.
So what are the lessons that you learned by returning to North Dakota for the harvest?
The lessons that I learned, I think the biggest one is that the people that surround me anyway in my community are good, supportive, and there for me. And I think that the lesson I learned in the book is that the silence that I carried, and I think a lot of people carry, have more to do with me than they had to do with anybody else, anybody imposing sort of a silence or a judgment on me. That was a huge sort of insight.
Real quick, you said it took you years to write the book, but you mentioned publishing the book a couple of times.
Yeah.
What was it difficult getting it published and getting through the process?
That's a great question. I think in general it's a difficult process. I think I was pretty lucky. I got an agent, and she found a publisher quite quickly. But I think the build-up to getting to that point took a very long time. So I'm happy to have the book.
Well, what would you like readers to take away from the book?
Yeah, I would love for readers to take away a reflection on their own lives and come away with some sort of impulse or inspiration to tell their own stories, whether it's through writing or talking to other people, particularly people who live in rural places. I think that we have unique stories to tell.
Okay. And Melanie, if people want more information about you or about the book, or where can they get the book? Where's the best place to go?
Yeah, I mean, you can get it in most bookstores. I would say that going to my website, which is simply melaniehoffert.com, has a list of places you can order it online and has more information about the book as a whole. So.
Okay. Well, Melanie, thanks so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Stay tuned for more. When Laura Moe decided to renovate her family home in Pelican Rapids, Minnesota, she knew it wasn't going to be a typical remodel. She wanted to create several art studios within her house. Now she provides spaces for painting, printmaking, woodworking, and pottery to rural artists in the community.
The Artist Hub is a place for students and artists to come and create and collaborate, socialize, connect. I've been collecting different art materials and art equipment for many, many years, and I decided to organize it into studios. So I've created a clay area, mosaic area, there's a wood shop area, a painting studio, a floor loom. Soon we'll have a dark room. We also have an area that we're developing for stained glass. It's fun for people to come and go and be able to use the equipment.
I don't know what it's going to be. You know, you never know when you first start out. It's just whatever it turns into. This is like I just fell into the most wonderful dream. It really is just fantastic. I have not done any pottery or any kind of for several years, and I have wanted to get back into this. And so when I found out about this place, I thought this is unbelievable.
The fee would be $15 a day, or you could take it out in sweat equity. So for 1 hour you might want to go and weed, or you might want to paint a wall or leave a sculpture or something like that. Almost like a co-op. That's what I'd like to eventually get to, as self-running co-op of artists. I met Millie Hansen down at a workshop in Fergus Falls for rural arts. I remember just feeling an instant connection with you, and we exchanged business cards, and we've been just conversing ever since then. And I have been so just amazed at how much time you've put in to come and put the loom together and actually loan it to the Artists Hub, and your beautiful art and everything.
Thank you. This kind of a loom is meant for weaving patterns. It's old, as you can see. It's not varnished and in perfect shape like a new loom. It can do a lot more than I'm using it for. I'm just using a foot, and it can weave all the way out to probably 4 feet. I've been doing art since I can remember. It's just really nice. It's a chance to be creative and do what I want to do.
Clay is made from sand and water and constant challenge of funding. I kind of fund all this myself and buy the materials. It's a matter of, you know, how much my paycheck is and how many other jobs I have. I'm part of the Mercantile downtown, and I work on my own artwork and teach. You take your back of your fingernail and push down and blend it. Yep, push down and blend into the leaf. Just seeing the spark and energy and thrill of discovery in a student's eyes. Somebody will ask, you know, what is the key to happiness? And for me, it's to create. You know, whether it's creating a poem, creating a piece of artwork, creating an area for a plant to grow. I just started printmaking about 3 years ago. This is called a lithographic poly print. You just take oil-based ink. You could use Sharpie. You could use a Bic pen and draw your design on it. I'm taking some water with some gum arabic on it, and I'm going to roll this ink onto the plate. And next is printing. There it is. It's a place where people can come and create, but visual arts attract people. The arts really are the base for good economic development in a city and town.
My tools, basic tools, is a jackknife, and then some things I made myself, some bows with sandpaper on them, and file, and another little sanding stick, 2 different grades of sandpaper that get in parts that I'm whittling on that I can't get otherwise. Twisting the blade, it kind of takes out the shavings that I want to get rid of, and it ends up a little bit rough in here, but then the sandpaper will take care of that.
I love meeting the different artists and visiting with them and their experiences and stories. What do you think your experience is like coming here to the Artist Hub? What do you think about having this here in Pelican Rapids?
It's community. It's fabulous. It's a way to share. learn, grow for everybody. And for me, it helps me get me out of my studio and keeps me from being such a hermit. I get new ideas by everything that I see. Anybody that I talk to, if they do something a certain way, then that sparks something for me. And likewise, I love sharing my ideas with other people.
I love Pelican Rapids, love small town living, and really want to develop a network and arts community here.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week, and as always, thanks for watching.
Funded in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, and by the members of Prairie Public.